The opinion piece is by far the most important part in the Leaving Certificate paper. So today we're going to talk about how to get higher marks in the opinion piece. The opinion piece is worth 50 marks, and how they mark it is considering two different parts. So content, and that is basically what you say, how you divide your paragraphs, and how you answer your questions. And language. Language is how you say it, so the vocabulary that you use, the verb tenses, if you include any subjunctives, how to switch from present to past, phrases or proverbs that could add more information. Always say, be careful and focus on the answer that you have been asked. Otherwise, even though your piece is very good and has no mistakes, you will not score highly on it. Now, when we start, the first thing that I always recommend is to read the two titles carefully and do a quick brainstorming of ideas, vocabulary or phrases that could suit the title. Once you have the two titles with the two brainstormings, then you can decide on one. Always plan your piece. So plan the paragraphs and plan what vocabulary would suit each paragraph. I always say that you wouldn't drive on a road without a destination. Why would you ride without an idea? You will always have to agree or disagree on the topic and be very specific with your agreement or disagreement. I always recommend using these two phrases. So, estoy totalmente de acuerdo o no estoy para nada de acuerdo. If you introduce the opinion piece with either those, that would make the reader realize of your ideas. Now, let's talk about how to gain maximum marks. Always use strong connectors that support your point of view. For example, all these follow a present tense. So, no cabe duda de que, sin duda, es un hecho que, es una realidad que, y como todo el mundo sabe. You can also use connectors to add ideas. For example, además, asimismo, or if you want to contrast ideas. For instance, por un lado, por otro lado, sin embargo, or if you want to go to an end. Por lo tanto, así que. It's good to include your personal opinion because at the end of the day, it's an opinion piece. And if you're short of ideas, if you want to include your opinion, that will give you extra content. Now, some teachers always recommend to include a proverb. I found these two phrases or proverbs that could be very handy because you can use them in any opinion piece that you will come across. And these are: no hay mal que por bien no venga. Every cloud has a silver lining. Or más vale prevenir que curar. Better safe than sorry. To verbs, always a variety of tenses is recommended. So use presents, switch to pasts or pretéritos, but always include at least one subjunctive, because when you use a subjunctive, the reader or the examiner is going to see that you know your verbs. Now, I'll give you some expressions that will take the subjunctive. For example, tengo miedo de que, siento que, espero que, es lógico que, es ridículo que, no creo que, dudo que, no pienso que. Then, cuando, and then a subjunctive if we refer to something in the future. For example, cuando termine el instituto, iré a la universidad. So when I finish school, I'll go to university. So in that case, you're using cuando and then a subjunctive in order to refer to something that will happen in the future. Another subjunctive that that not a lot of students learn, but it really helps in the opinion piece, is the imperfect subjunctive. And in Spanish we call it pretérito perfecto de subjuntivo. This is used basically to express unreal situations or wishes at the present time. In English, it doesn't exist, and that's the struggle when we have to learn it in Spanish, because if we don't have the equivalent, how can we relate it? I always say that it's a second conditional in English. Is when we say, for example, if I were the president or if I had money. That phrase is what we use in Spanish, the pretérito imperfecto de subjuntivo. I wouldn't really worry about learning this one, but I would always recommend to take into account these two, which are si fuera, if I were, and si tuviera, if I had. If you use these two, and you don't have to learn anything else, but if you included those two at the end of the opinion piece, so in the conclusion part, that gives you, first of all, you're including your opinion, and you're using a situation where, what would you do in that situation? It's not taught in many schools, but I think it's good to consider that one. Now, when it comes to paragraphs, the recommended length or the recommended number of paragraphs would be 4 or 5, which means that if you include 4, one of them should be the introduction, one idea, second idea, and then the conclusion. Okay, I'd say the best is to include 5, so you have one introduction, one conclusion, and 3 ideas. Normally, the paragraphs should include 3 sentences each, where in the paragraph you would have the introduction to the idea, the development of the idea, and then the conclusion of the idea. Now, let's talk about common mistakes. One of the main common mistakes is going off topic, and I understand because sometimes the topics are really tough, and to be honest, it would be difficult to write in our own language, so it's something that we have to take into account. They can be hard to develop, but do your best and stay as close as you can to the topic that you have been asked. Another common mistake is to include 2 paragraphs that have very similar ideas. For example, if the topic or the opinion piece is about investing money in society, and you have one paragraph with teenagers and leisure time, and then you have the second paragraph with teenagers and school facilities. Include the teenage part in one paragraph, and maybe you can use the second paragraph to include another age group, for example. And the last one I want to talk about is not revising the piece when we're finished. So yeah, read the piece. Make sure your agreement is on point and your verbs are conjugated according to the tense and the person, and overall spelling is correct. So basically, this is how I would advise my students to write an opinion piece. I hope you can find it useful. And if you have any other questions or you have any other requests, please comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.